Welcome back to the Deep Dive. I am so glad you are here with us today. Before we get into today's topic, and I'm going to warn you right now, this one is going to change the way you look at everything in your life, from, borrowing a neighbor's lawnmower to how you sign a check at the grocery store. I have a small favor to ask.
It's the toll fee for the knowledge.
Exactly. If you enjoy these deep dives, if you like that feeling of getting smarter while you're stuck in traffic or, I don't know, folding the laundry, please just hit that subscribe button on your podcast player right now.
Right now, it makes a huge difference.
It's the single best way to help us grow the show, and it means you never miss a dive. Also, check out the website. We've put up a whole stack of resources there that complement what we're talking about today.
And for today's topic, you are definitely going to want to see the text, because we are going into the belly of the beast.
We are. We really are. We're taking on a document that most people go their whole lives without ever reading until, well, it's too late. We are taking on the Texas Penal Code, specifically Chapter 31.
The theft statutes.
Now, I know what you're probably thinking right now. You're thinking theft. I know what theft is. It's taking stuff that isn't yours. Why do I need a deep dive on that?
And that is the classic mistake. It's that, I know it when I see it, fallacy. You think theft is the guy in the black mask running out of the bank with a bag of cash.
Or the teenager shoving a candy bar in their pocket.
Right. And sure, that is theft. Of course it is. But when you actually crack open the source material, which I've spent the last week doing, and let me tell you, it is dense, you realize that Texas law is this massive, incredibly complex spider web.
It's not simple.
Not at all. Chapter 31 isn't just about stealing physical objects. It's a consolidation of dozens of old-school crimes into one giant legal umbrella.
I was reading through the notes you prepared, and I was honestly shocked by the scope. We're talking about porch pirates. Sure, that's obvious.
Right.
But we're also talking about dining and dashing. We're talking about stealing oil directly out of a pipeline, which is apparently a thing.
A very big thing in Texas, yeah.
We're talking about stealing the deed to someone's house, so you own their home while they're still sleeping in it.
Which is terrifying, absolutely terrifying.
So our mission today is simple, but pretty heavy. We're going to translate this from legalese into plain English. We want to dummy down the Texas theft statutes so that whether you're a business owner, a renter, or just someone who buys used stuff on Facebook Marketplace, you understand where the legal lines are actually drawn.
And trust me, some of those lines are not where you think they are. You might be committing a felony right now and not even know it.
Okay, that is ominous. So let's jump right into the foundation. Section 31.02. This was the first thing that just jumped out at me. The law literally calls it the consolidation of theft offenses.
Right. And to understand this, you kind of have to look at history. If you go back to Old English common law or even older Texas law, stealing wasn't just one crime. It was this fragmented mess.
How so? What do you mean?
Well, if you worked at a bank and you took money out of the vault, that was embezzlement, a very specific crime. If you tricked someone into giving you their watch by lying about who you were, that was called swindling.
Swindling, okay.
If you threatened someone to get their money, that was extortion. If you just took something off a shelf at a store, that was shoplifting. And if you bought something you knew was stolen, that was receiving stolen property.
So there are all these different little buckets.
Completely different buckets with different rules of evidence, different elements the prosecutor had to prove. So what would happen is a prosecutor might charge you with swindling, but then your defense attorney would argue, "No, Your Honor, technically this fits the definition of embezzlement," and you might get off on a technicality.
I see. So the state said, okay, we need to fix this. This is a mess.
Exactly.
Well,
Section 31.02 is the fix. It basically says, we don't care how you did it. We don't care if you swindled, embezzled, extorted, or shoplifted. All of those separate offenses are now superseded by a single offense: theft.
So if I embezzle money from my company, or if I trick you into giving me your watch, or if I just mug you in the eyes of the Texas statute, it's all just theft.
Substantively, yes. The charge on the sheet is theft. Now, the way we prove it might vary based on the facts, but the core offense is identical. And that brings us to what I call the golden formula of theft in Texas, which is found in Section 31.03.
Okay, let's unpack this formula, because it seems like every single theft case, from a candy bar to a billion-dollar Ponzi scheme, boils down to this one sentence. What is the definition?
The statute says, a person commits an offense if he unlawfully appropriates property with intent to deprive the owner of property.
Unlawfully appropriates with intent to deprive. Sounds so simple, almost poetic. But I have a feeling we need to break down those words because in the legal world, words never mean just what the dictionary says they mean.
Never.
Let's start with appropriate. In my head, appropriate means I picked it up and put it in my pocket.
It definitely includes that. That's the most basic form, for sure. But Section 31.01 defines it much more broadly. Appropriate means to acquire or otherwise exercise control over property.
Exercise control. Okay.
But here is the real kicker. It also means to bring about a transfer of title or other non-possessory interest.
Translate that for me. What does that actually mean?
It means I don't have to touch the physical object to steal it. Let's say I trick you into signing your car title over to my name.
Okay.
The car is still sitting in your driveway. I haven't even touched the door handle. But the moment you sign that paper, I have appropriated that car.
Because the paper says it's yours now. The ownership changed.
Exactly. I have illegally transferred the interest in the property to myself. That counts as appropriation. It's a theft of paperwork, but it's really a theft of the car.
Okay. And then there's the second half of that equation, deprive. This definition in Section 31.01 was really interesting to me because it covers so much more than just keeping it forever.
Correct. Obviously, withholding property permanently is depriving. That's the easy one. If I steal your phone and I just keep it in my drawer forever, I've deprived you of it.
No question.
But the law knows that thieves play games, so they expanded the definition to close those loopholes.
What's the first expansion?
It includes withholding property for so extended a period of time that a major portion of the value or enjoyment of the property is lost to the owner.
Okay, I want to stop on that. Major portion of the value or enjoyment. The example that immediately popped into my head, and tell me if I'm right here, is a concert ticket.
That is the classic law school exam question. It's perfect. Let's play it out. Let's say you have a front row ticket to see Taylor Swift in Dallas.
Which is worth what? A mortgage payment these days? Maybe more?
Easily, maybe 2. So I sneak into your house on Saturday afternoon. I take the ticket. The concert is Saturday night. I go. I have the time of my life.
Using my ridiculously expensive ticket.
Using your ticket. Then, the next morning, feeling a little guilty, or maybe just cheeky, I put the ticket stub in an envelope and I mail it back to you. Technically, have I returned your property?
Physically, yes. I have the piece of paper back in my hand on Monday.
Exactly. I didn't keep it permanently. But under Texas law, have I deprived you of it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because the value wasn't the piece of cardboard. The value was the experience on Saturday night. By returning it on Sunday, the value is 0. It's just a souvenir of a show I didn't get to see.
Bingo. That is theft. Even though you got the item back, I stole the value of the item. And that definition applies to all sorts of things. Seasonal equipment, time-sensitive documents.
So if I take your snowblower in December and return it in April,
You stole the utility of it. You were deprived of the enjoyment of that property exactly when you needed it most. That's theft.
that makes total sense. And there's another part to deprive that caught my eye. Disposing of property in a manner that makes recovery unlikely.
Right. This is the I didn't keep it defense. This happens all the time. Imagine I snatch your phone on the street, I run a block, realize it's locked with a passcode and I can't use it, so I panic and throw it into the middle of Lady Bird Lake.
You don't have it anymore. You ditch the evidence.
I don't. So if the police catch me 2 blocks later, I could try to say, hey, look at my pockets. I don't have his phone. I'm not possessing stolen property.
Right.
But under the definition of deprive, throwing it in the lake is the same as keeping it. You made recovery unlikely. Therefore, it's theft.
It prevents the loophole of just destroying the property to get rid of it.
Exactly. Destruction is deprivation.
Now let's get to the really sticky part, the part that I think causes the most arguments in court. Unlawful. The statute says appropriation is unlawful if it is without the owner's effective consent.
This is where cases are won and lost. This is the heart of pretty much all white-collar crime and fraud.
Because consent seems so black and white. Did I say you could have it, yes or no? But the law adds that one crucial word, effective.
Right. And Section 31.01 lays out a whole list of reasons why consent might not be effective. It's basically saying, yes, you might have said okay, but your okay doesn't count because of the circumstances.
Give me the most obvious one.
Coercion. It's the easiest to understand. If I hold a gun to your head and say, give me your keys, and you hand them to me, technically you consented. You physically handed them over.
I did. I chose to hand them over.
But that consent was coerced. It's void from the start. Therefore, it is not effective consent, and I have committed theft.
That's obvious. But what about deception? That seems much more common in the real world.
Deception is huge. If I induce your consent by deception, it's theft. And the law defines deception as creating a false impression of fact, basically lying.
Okay, walk me through a clear example.
Let's say I put on a vest that looks like a valet uniform. I go stand outside a fancy restaurant. You pull up in your car. I smile. I open your door. You hand me your keys.
I consented to give you the keys. I handed them right to you.
You did, but why did you consent? What was in your mind?
Well, because I thought you were the valet. I thought you worked there.
Exactly. I created a false impression of fact. Your consent was induced by my lie. Therefore, it is not effective consent, and I have committed theft of your vehicle the moment I drive it away.
What if I didn't lie, though? What if I just didn't correct you? Like you walked up and assumed I was the valet, and I just smiled and took the keys without saying a single word.
The law covers that too. Deception includes failing to correct a false impression that the actor previously created or confirmed, or, and this is a big one for business deals, preventing another from acquiring information that is likely to affect their judgment in the transaction.
So omission can be deception. Silence can be a lie.
Absolutely. Silence can be theft. There is also a very specific definition regarding selling things. If I sell you a car, but I don't tell you that the bank actually has a lien on it.
Meaning I can't actually get the title free and clear.
Right. The bank can repossess it from you, even though you paid me. Under the law, I am transferring or encumbering property without disclosing a lien. That voids your consent to the purchase, and it becomes a theft. I stole your money because you wouldn't have given it to me if you knew the truth.
What about the person who is giving the consent? Does their mental state matter?
Yes, hugely. Consent is not effective if it is given by a person who, by reason of youth, mental disease or defect, or intoxication, is known by the actor to be unable to make reasonable property dispositions.
Okay, let's paint a picture. I'm at a bar. My friend is absolutely hammered. Slurring his words, stumbling, clearly legally intoxicated. And he starts feeling generous. He takes off his expensive Rolex and says, "Here, buddy, you're the best. I want you to have this watch."
And if you take it and you keep it,
Even though he gave it to me, he insisted.
you are likely committing theft. Because you know his consent is ineffective due to intoxication. You are appropriating the property knowing the owner cannot make a reasonable decision. The law protects people from being taken advantage of when they aren't in their right mind.
Wow, okay. That is a sobering thought, pun intended.
Yeah.
So that's the foundation. Unlawful appropriation, intent to deprive, and the many, many ways consent can be voided. Now, I want to move into section 2 of our outline, everyday scenarios, because the law gets very specific about things regular people encounter every day.
It does. We leave the abstract definitions and get into the nitty-gritty of daily life. And one of the most common ones is theft of service.
Section 31.04. This answers the question, can you steal something that isn't a physical object?
Yes, absolutely. Services include labor, professional services, public utilities, transportation, lodging, and restaurant service.
So the classic dine and dash.
Exactly. If you intentionally secure performance of the service like eating the meal by deception, threat, or false token, it's theft. But the statute also has a really interesting part that covers what they call absconding.
Absconding, that's a great legal word. It implies running away, right, scurrying out the door.
It means leaving secretly or hurriedly. And the law says your intent to avoid payment is presumed if the actor absconded without paying in circumstances where payment is ordinarily made immediately.
Like a hotel or a restaurant.
Precisely.
So the prosecutor doesn't have to get inside my head and prove I planned it from the start.
No, that's the beauty of the presumption. Even if you sat down fully intending to pay, but then you realized you forgot your wallet and you decided to sneak out the bathroom window, the act of sneaking out creates the presumption of theft. The burden shifts to you.
Okay, that covers dinner. What about rental cars? Or renting tools from a hardware store? I feel like everyone has returned a rental car an hour or two late. Is that theft?
An hour late? No, probably not theft. That's a contract dispute. You'll get hit with a late fee. But the law is very, very strict about holding property beyond the expiration of the rental period. This is section 31.04A3. If you hold property beyond the expiration date without the owner's effective consent, depriving them of its use in further rentals, that is theft of service.
But how do they distinguish between "I just forgot" and "I'm stealing this U-Haul"? Because people are forgetful. Life happens.
This brings us to what I like to call the nasty letter rule.
The nasty letter rule.
Yeah.
I like that. It's memorable.
It's all about notice. The statute sets up these legal presumptions based on when you return the item after receiving a formal notice. Basically, the criminal clock doesn't start ticking on your intent until the rental company sends you a formal written demand for the property.
Okay, so I'm 2 days late with a carpet cleaner I rented. They call me. Am I in trouble with the law yet?
You're in trouble with the store, sure. You owe late fees. But you haven't committed a crime. Not yet. However, if they send you a notice demanding the return of the property and you ignore that notice, now you're walking into felony territory.
How much time do I have once I get that letter?
It depends on how expensive the item is. This is where you really need to pay attention. If the property is worth less than $2,500, like that carpet cleaner, you have 5 days after receiving that notice to get it back.
5 days. Okay, that seems like a decent grace period.
It is. But if the property is worth between $2,500 and $10,000, that window shrinks to just 3 days.
3 days.
And if it's worth over $10,000, which is almost every rental car on the planet these days, you have only 2 days after receiving notice.
2 days. That is nothing. If I'm out of town for a long weekend and I miss the mail.
That's the catch. The law gets very specific about how that notice has to be sent. It has to be certified mail or a commercial delivery service like FedEx or UPS. And here's the kicker. The law presumes you received the notice 2 days after it was sent, or 5 days, depending on the specific method.
Wait. So if I just don't open my mailbox or I dodge the mailman, the law just says, too bad, we assume you got it.
Effectively, yes. It's called constructive notice. If you rented a car, kept it way past the date, and you are ignoring certified letters from Hertz or Enterprise, the law says we are now presuming you intend to steal that car.
And that presumption just flips the whole case on its head.
It shifts the dynamic entirely. Now you have to explain to a judge why you didn't intend to steal it rather than the state having to prove that you did.
So the life lesson here is, if you get a certified letter from anyone you rented something from, you drop everything and you open it.
Do not ignore the nasty letter. It is the bridge between a civil dispute and a pair of handcuffs.
Let's talk about checks. Section 31.06. People don't write checks as much as they used to, but businesses do it all the time. What is theft by check?
It's when you obtain property or services by issuing a check that you know is no good. The law presumes you intended to steal if, number one, you didn't have an account at all at the time. That's an easy one.
Oh.
If you write a check on a closed account, that's just straight up theft.
Right, that's obvious fraud.
The second way is if payment was refused by the bank for insufficient funds, and, here's the key again, you failed to pay the holder in full within 10 days after receiving notice of the refusal.
There is that 10-day rule again.
Yeah.
It seems like Texas law consistently gives you a short grace period to fix a mistake.
Yeah.
But if you ignore it, the mistake turns criminal.
Precisely. It shifts from a civil dispute, which is I owe you money, to a criminal offense, which is I stole from you. And here's a crucial detail people miss. This applies even if you stop payment on the check.
Oh, really? I thought stopping payment was a consumer right. Like, if I buy a fridge from a store and they deliver a broken one, I call my bank and stop the check.
It is a right, but if you stop payment on a check for property you bought and you don't return the property,
There's the catch.
if you don't return that broken fridge within 10 days of a demand for its return, the law presumes you intended to deprive the owner. You can't keep the fridge and stop the payment.
That makes perfect sense. You can't have your cake and eat it too, legally speaking. Now, moving from checks to the mall, retail theft, section 31.15 and 31.16.
Right. This is an area where the law has really evolved to try and catch up with professional shoplifters, not just, kids taking gum.
I saw something in there about shielding instruments. It sounded like something out of a spy movie, a deactivation instrument.
It's actually very low-tech but highly illegal. Section 31.15 makes it a specific crime just to possess a shielding or deactivation instrument with the intent to use it for theft.
But what counts as a shielding instrument?
The most common one is a foil-lined shopping bag.
The classic booster bag, to block the sensors at the door.
Exactly. If you line your backpack with aluminum foil to stop those RFID tags from beeping, simply walking into the store with that bag is a crime. You haven't even stolen anything yet. Or any tool designed to remove those hard plastic security tags. If you walk into a store with one of those powerful magnets in your pocket, you are already committing a Class A misdemeanor before you even touch a shirt.
Just for possessing the tool.
Just for possessing the tool with intent.
And then there's organized retail theft. This sounds like the mob, but it could be much simpler than that, right?
It can be. Section 31.16 defines this in a few ways. It includes acting in concert with others to steal, sure, but it also includes stealing retail merchandise on 2 or more occasions within a 180-day period. So if you're a habitual shoplifter hitting different Target stores every month, they can aggregate those thefts into one charge of organized retail theft.
And there's a specific provision for that mob robbery tactic we've seen on the news sometimes.
Yes. The statute specifically mentions knowingly acting with others to overwhelm the security response of a merchant. If you and 10 of your friends run into a store and just start grabbing stuff, relying on the fact that the one security guard can't possibly catch all of you, that is a specific, heavier charge under organized retail theft.
I also noticed some presumptions in the retail section. Like, I'm just holding a price tag. That could be a problem.
Well, if you act to alter, transfer, or remove a label, price tag, or UPC code, the law presumes you have the intent to deprive the merchant of the full value. So peeling the $50 sticker off a nice blender and swapping it with the $10 sticker from a cheap coffee maker, that act is presumed theft.
So don't swap the tags, folks. It's not a life hack, it's a crime.
Exactly.
Okay, let's leave the mall and head out to the oil patch. Section 3 of our outline. Heavy metal. This is where it gets very Texas. Texas is a huge industrial state, and the theft laws really reflect that. We have specific statutes for things that most people in other states would never even dream of stealing.
This is where we see the legislature reacting to very specific, very expensive industry problems. Let's start with cargo theft, Section 31.18.
What counts as cargo? Is that anything on a truck?
It's defined as goods moving in commerce, from the point of origin to the final destination. So yes, the stuff on the truck. This statute is designed to protect the entire supply chain.
And the penalties are steep, I'm guessing?
Very. It targets people who knowingly conduct activity to receive, conceal, or sell stolen cargo. But it also specifically targets the inside job. There is a provision just for truck drivers. If you are a contracted driver and you fail to deliver the cargo, or, and this is very specific, you cause the seal to be broken on the vehicle with intent to steal, you are liable under this statute.
The seal on the truck, the little plastic tag on the back doors.
Yes. Breaking that seal is a critical moment in the chain of custody for that cargo. If you break it without authorization, the law assumes you're up to no good, and the punishment escalates rapidly. If the cargo is worth over $200,000, which is easy for a truckload of iPhones or pharmaceuticals,
Oh, yeah.
it is a first-degree felony. That is the same level as murder in some contexts.
Wow. Don't mess with the supply chain in Texas.
Yeah.
And speaking of Texas supply chains, Section 31.19, theft of petroleum product.
This is classic Texas. You can literally be charged with stealing oil.
How do you even steal oil? I mean, besides some kind of Ocean's 11 style heist.
Well, the statute lists a few ways. The obvious one is drilling a tap directly into a pipeline or a storage tank. That happens more than you would think out in remote areas.
Really?
Oh, yeah. But it also covers things like transporting petroleum product for which the person cannot identify the owner, or purchasing it from someone not authorized by the Railroad Commission of Texas.
The Railroad Commission, I always have to stop here for our non-Texan listeners. The Railroad Commission has almost nothing to do with trains.
Correct. They regulate oil and gas. They are the supreme authority on all things petroleum in the state.
So if you are buying crude oil on the cheap from some guy in a truck who doesn't have the paperwork from the Railroad Commission, you are committing an offense.
Right. If you can't show the manifest, if you can't show the chain of custody, the law presumes it's stolen. It's a closed-loop system for a reason.
And it covers equipment too, right? Not just the oil itself.
Yes. Oil and gas equipment. Things like rigs, pumps, valves. Theft of this specific equipment carries its own felony ladder.
Closely related to that is Section 31.22, critical infrastructure and metals. We hear about copper theft all the time. People stripping wires from streetlights or construction sites.
It is a massive problem because it causes so much damage. Section 31.22 specifically targets copper or brass material. If you possess it and you aren't an authorized entity like a utility company, a licensed recycler, or an electrician, it can be a crime in itself.
And where you steal it from matters a lot.
Hugely. If you steal that copper from what the law defines as a critical infrastructure facility, the penalty is automatically bumped up to a third-degree felony, regardless of the value.
And the definition of critical infrastructure in Section 31.01 is surprisingly long and detailed.
It is. It's not just power plants or refineries. It includes water treatment plants, natural gas compressor stations, cell towers, or as they call them, telecommunications, central switching offices, railroad yards, and even dams that are classified as high hazard.
I saw concentrated animal feeding operations on that list too. A feedlot.
Yes, a feedlot.
So just so I'm clear, in Texas, a giant cow feedlot is on the same legal level as a nuclear power plant when it comes to the crime of stealing metal from it.
In terms of being defined as critical infrastructure for this statute, yes. Now think about why. If you sneak onto a massive feedlot to strip copper wire from the lighting and pump systems, you are facing a much steeper penalty than if you strip that same wire from a regular office building.
Why? What is the logic there?
It's about the potential for disruption. It's the ripple effect. If you strip the wire from a feedlot, the ventilation fans might stop. The water pumps might stop. You could kill thousands of cattle. The economic damage goes way beyond the $50 of copper you stole.
That makes sense. It's about protecting the system, not just the wire.
Exactly. And we can't talk about metal theft without talking about catalytic converters. Section 31.21. This feels like a very recent addition to the code.
It is. This was added in 2023 because of the absolute epidemic of converter thefts. We all saw the news stories, heard about it from our neighbors.
The law now says this. If you possess a catalytic converter that has been removed from a vehicle, you are presumed to have unlawfully appropriated it unless you are the owner of the car it came from or a legitimate auto business, like a mechanic or a salvage yard.
So if I'm pulled over and I have 3 cut-off catalytic converters in my trunk and I'm not a mechanic,
You're going to have a very bad day. Good luck explaining that. The presumption is against you. The law presumes you are a thief, and there is a serious enhancement. If you possess a firearm while stealing catalytic converters, it bumps it straight to a third-degree felony.
they are not playing around with the converters anymore. Okay, let's pivot to Section 4. We've done industrial theft. Now let's talk white-collar, high-tech, and property. Section 31.05. Theft of trade secrets.
This is corporate espionage, plain and simple. Stealing scientific or technical information, designs, formulas, or process procedures. Things that give a business its competitive edge.
Usually, theft is graded by the fair market value. But a trade secret's value is incredibly hard to quantify. It could be worth millions or nothing.
It is, and that's why the offense itself is categorized based on the act, not just the dollar amount. It is usually a third-degree felony right off the bat. But there is a very interesting twist in the statute regarding who you are stealing it for.
The foreign agent twist.
Exactly. If the offense is committed with the intent to benefit a foreign agent, a foreign government, or a foreign instrumentality, it becomes a second-degree felony.
So stealing the secret formula for a new Texas BBQ sauce to give to a competitor in Dallas is bad.
Very bad. A felony.
But stealing that same formula to give to a foreign government agency is worse.
Much worse. The legislature is clearly concerned about international intellectual property theft. It turns a business crime into a national security issue.
Now, let's talk about something that hits much closer to home for most of us. Mail theft. Section 31.2 porch pirates.
This is a huge annoyance and a real problem for everyone. The law breaks it down by the number of people you steal from.
So the volume of victims matters, not just the value of the packages.
Yes. Appropriating mail from fewer than 10 different addressees is a Class A misdemeanor. But if you hit a whole street and you steal from 10 to 30 people, it becomes a state jail felony. And if you steal from 30 or more addresses, it's a third-degree felony.
And there are presumptions here too, right, to make it easier to prove.
Yes. This is important. If you are caught possessing mail addressed to 5 or more different addresses, the law creates a rebuttable presumption that you intended to steal it. You can't just say, oh, I found these 5 different Amazon packages on the sidewalk and was just keeping them safe. The law assumes you are a thief.
And if there are checks or credit cards in the mail?
Even worse, if the mail contains identifying information or negotiable instruments like checks, the penalties ramp up. And crucially, if the victim is elderly or disabled, the penalty is automatically increased to the next higher category.
So stealing grandma's birthday checks is a very quick way to get a felony conviction.
A very quick way. The law takes that very seriously.
Now, this next one absolutely blew my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Section 31.23. Real property theft. This is a new edition, right? It says Act 2025.
Yes, this is very recent. It's designed to address a growing problem called deed fraud.
Stealing a house.
Essentially, yes, it criminalizes the act of filing a fraudulent deed or other transfer of title document. We've seen these horrible cases where scammers file paperwork with the county clerk claiming they now own someone's house or an elderly person's vacant lot, and then they try to sell it or borrow against it.
That is terrifying. You can wake up one day and find out that on paper, someone else owns your house.
That's why the legislature acted so forcefully. The penalties are incredibly severe. If the value of the property is $300,000 or more, which is just a normal house in many parts of Texas these days, it is a first-degree felony.
The first degree. That is serious, serious time.
It is. And again, there are enhancements if the property is a residence homestead, meaning it's your main home, or if the victim is elderly. The state is sending a very clear message. Do not mess with land titles in Texas.
I'm glad the protection is there.
Okay, we've covered what counts as theft, a huge range of things. Now let's talk about the consequences. Section 5, the price you pay. How do they determine the value of what was stolen? Because that seems to dictate the entire punishment.
Section 31.08 governs value. The standard rule is fair market value at the time and place of the offense. What would a willing buyer pay a willing seller on the open market?
What if you can't figure that out? Like, I steal a used laptop that's 5 years old, or I steal your family photo album, which is priceless to you but essentially worthless to a pawn shop. That's a great question. If fair market value cannot be ascertained, the law uses replacement cost within a reasonable time after the theft. What would it cost you to go buy a similar 5-year-old laptop? But there's also what I call the middle ground rule. If the value cannot be reasonably ascertained by any criteria, the law deems the value to be between $750 and $2,500.
So it defaults to a Class A misdemeanor level.
Exactly. It prevents the thief from getting off scot-free just because the item had a weird or sentimental value that couldn't be priced.
Now, what about the Costco approach to crime? Stealing in bulk, aggregation. Section 31.09.
This is critical for prosecutors, especially in employee theft cases. Let's say you are an employee at a store and you steal $50 out of the cash register every Friday for a year.
$50 is a Class C misdemeanor, basically a ticket.
Right. So you might think, well, the worst that can happen is I'll just get 52 tickets. But Section 31.09 says if these amounts are obtained pursuant to one scheme or continuing course of conduct, the state can add them all up.
So $50 times 52 weeks is $2,600.
And that pushes you into a whole different bracket.
Yes. Now you are facing a state jail felony instead of 52 traffic ticket level citations. Aggregation allows the punishment to match the total scale of the theft.
It turns 100 petty thefts into one grand theft.
Let's walk through that ladder of punishment briefly. Section 31.03e. What are the breakpoints? Because I think people need to know where the cliffs are.
Okay, here's the quick and dirty version. Under $100 is a Class C misdemeanor, basically a fine. $100 to $750 is a Class B misdemeanor. $750 to $2,500 is a Class A misdemeanor. This is where you start seeing potential jail time of up to a year.
And then we hit the felonies.
Yes. $2,500 is the magic number. From there, up to $30,000 is a state jail felony. $30,000 to $150,000 is a third-degree felony. $150,000 to $300,000 is a second-degree felony. And anything over $300,000 is a first-degree felony.
So stealing a high-end luxury car, like a new Escalade or something, is a first-degree felony.
Very likely, yes.
Are there things that are felonies no matter what their dollar value is?
Yes. This is really important. Regardless of value, theft of a firearm is strictly a state jail felony. You steal a $50 broken pistol from a pawn shop. It's a felony.
Wow.
Theft from the person of another, like pickpocketing, is a state jail felony, even if the wallet was empty. Theft of an official election ballot, felony. And certain metals like aluminum, bronze, copper, if the value is less than $20,000, it's still automatically a state jail felony.
So the nature of the item itself can make it a felony.
Exactly.
And on top of that, we have enhancements. Section 31.0310 SF. These are things that can bump you up to the next punishment level.
Right. We mentioned some already. Stealing from an elderly individual or a nonprofit organization. If you steal from a charity, the penalty goes up 1 grade. If you are a public servant stealing by virtue of your status, like a city employee stealing city funds, it goes up 1 grade.
And there was that weird one about fire alarms.
Yes, I love that one. If, during the commission of the theft, you intentionally cause a fire exit alarm to sound, or you deactivate a theft detector device, the penalty increases.
So if I steal a $500 item, which is a Class B misdemeanor, but I pull the fire alarm to create a distraction on my way out.
It bumps it up to a Class A, or higher depending on the specifics. Creating chaos is an aggravating factor in the eyes of the law.
Section 6. The final piece of this puzzle. Presumptions of guilt. Specifically for people who are buying stuff. We always hear possession is 9/10 of the law, but knowing seems to be the other crucial part. Can I get in trouble for buying something I didn't actually know was stolen?
The legal standard is usually that you must know it was stolen. But, proving what is in someone's head is the hardest thing to do in law. So the law sets up presumptions for certain businesses and situations. If you ignore the obvious red flags, the law basically says, we presume you knew.
Give me an example of that.
Used property dealers. Pawn shops, resale shops. That's Section 31.03C3. If a dealer pays more than $25 for an item and fails to record the seller's ID, address, and physical description,
They are presumed to know it's stolen.
if it turns out to be stolen, yes, the presumption of knowledge kicks in because they failed to follow the very simple record-keeping rules designed to prevent theft.
What about buying a used car? That happens all the time.
A huge one. If you buy a used car and you fail to get the title immediately, or you fail to file the transfer paperwork with the county within 20 business days, and that car turns out to be stolen, the law presumes you knew it was stolen.
So the lesson is, do the paperwork immediately.
Always. If a deal looks too good to be true, hey, I'll give you this car for $2,000 cash, no title needed, just take the keys. You are walking into a legal trap. The law assumes that if you bypass the official title transfer process, you probably suspected something was wrong.
And for salvage yards.
Same idea. Failing to keep a detailed inventory of parts, failing to remove the license plates from wrecked cars, these administrative failures create a presumption of criminal knowledge if stolen parts are found on their lot.
It really seems like the underlying theme of Chapter 31 is documentation is your defense.
That is a very, very good way to put it. Whether it's responding to a certified letter about a rental car, getting a title for a car you just bought, or recording the ID of someone selling you a guitar at your pawn shop, documentation proves you were acting in good faith. A lack of documentation allows the state to presume the worst about you.
This has been an incredible tour through the code. I honestly feel like I understand the rules of the road for property so much better now.
It is a massive, massive umbrella. We went from skimming credit cards, which is covered in Section 31.1 SEM, to stealing cows. And yes, livestock theft is specifically enhanced in the code all under the single heading of theft.
It really does emphasize that intent to deprive and effective consent are the two pillars holding this entire structure up.
Absolutely. Everything flows from those two concepts.
So here's my final thought for you, the listener. We've seen how the law has evolved over time. We got these new catalytic converter laws in 2023. We got the deed fraud laws in 2025. The law is constantly racing to catch up with technology and new ways that people invent to steal from each other.
It is. It's always a step behind.
So what is next? What is the next asset class that is going to require its own specific section in Chapter 31? Is it virtual reality assets? If I steal your digital sword in a game that's worth 5,000 real dollars, is that theft under the current law? Or will it need its own statute? What about AI-generated content?
That is a fascinating question. As value continues to shift to the digital and the intangible, Chapter 31 will have to expand again. I would not be surprised at all to see a theft of digital asset statute in the next legislative session.
Something to mull over. Thank you so much for guiding us through this. This was incredible.
My pleasure.
And thank you for listening to The Deep Dive. Remember, stay safe, check your titles, don't ignore those certified letters, and please subscribe to the channel. We will see you next time.